Bloody welcome to a new episode of Cheap, Lazy and Willing. Not really, it's cheap, tasty and filling, I think you'll find. But I'm going to play with that, as you know I will. Anyway, welcome back. There's not going to be a huge introduction today, don't worry, we're going to get to the cooking quite soon. So, I've been around the house, I've looked in the fridges and I've seen what I've got. And I have a broccoli which needs to be cooked today, or else it's going to start going over. I've got some onions, I've got some celery, I've got some garlic, homegrown garlic. What else have I got? I've got half a packet of Quorn chunks, sort of chickeny style chunks. I've got the end of a packet of frozen peas. And of course, the usual spices, mixed herbs, parsley, things like that. So I've gathered together a few ingredients. Now, the thing about today's episode is we've got some leftover soup, we've got some leftover stew. So our meal for today is kind of sorted. Our meals for today are sorted. Soup for lunch, leftover stew for this evening. So, what I'm thinking is, I've got a little bit of time this morning, this beautiful sunny winter morning that's showing my dirty windows. I've got a little bit of time, so I thought what I'd do is think ahead to tomorrow and make a gorgeous sauce. I'm thinking a white wine sauce here, white wine creamy sauce, but with no cheese. Calories, lower them. For tomorrow's dinner. Yeah, think ahead, plan ahead. If you do have a little bit of time on your hands and you think, I'll do a bit of cooking, because it's quite relaxing when you're sort of cooking in the kitchen quietly, getting on with it. Think ahead. Now, let's just talk briefly about storing things that you've cooked. If you are planning ahead to tomorrow or the day after, or the day after that, something stored in the fridge up to a few days is fine. But you've got to make sure that you reheat it properly. So, for example, the stew that I'm going to have tonight and the soup needs to be heated to boiling point and simmered for at least 5 minutes. So if anything is starting to develop in there that's not so great, you kill it off. So always make sure that you reheat a dish properly. So it's piping hot and it's piping hot for 5 minutes. That way you can avoid food poisoning. You know what? I haven't had food poisoning for years. Years and years and years. Because we're careful. We're careful with hygiene. We're careful in the kitchen. We wipe surfaces and we don't use meat, frankly. The thought of having... Anyway, none of that with today's episode, because it's all vegetarian, obviously. So, without further ado, let's go in the kitchen and make this dish, which is going to be, I guess, broccoli and Quorn in a white wine sauce. Can be served with pasta or rice. I'm thinking actually under the bed upstairs where we keep some of the food. I know, thinking about hygiene. It's all in a box. We've got some red rice, some Camargue rice. I think it would go really nice. It would be almost like a Quorn supreme. Chicken supreme, but with Quorn. Chicken and broccoli supreme with Quorn, with rice. Let's get in the kitchen before I waffle on any further. Okay, ingredients, let's go through them. Hope you can see everything okay. In this bowl, I've got celery, about 3 sticks, including the leaves. I've got an onion, and I've got 3 small yellow peppers, which I've chopped up. I've got broccoli, which I've cut into bite-sized chunks, makes it go further and enables it to cook quicker especially if you don't leave all the stalks on. I've got some flour, I've got half a packet of Quorn chunks, I've got some frozen peas, the end of the packet, I've got a glass of white wine, which I'm strangely tempted by at the moment, even though it's early in the day. I've got some oat milk, English mustard, chopped garlic, two cloves of garlic, homegrown. I've got mixed herbs. I've got parsley, the obligatory bouillon powder, and some ground black pepper. And of course, olive oil. Let's get this cooking. Okay, so I'm using my shallow stainless steel pan as usual. I'm going to get the heat on. Get it hot. I'm using a wooden spoon. Let's add a little bit of olive oil. Now, to make this creamy, I'm using the roux method, which means you add flour, cook the flour, and then add a liquid, and the sauce will thicken. But the first thing I'm going to do is add my celery, onions and pepper and just saute them. Here they go. I roughly chop everything. I don't do any of this, chef chopping. I can't do that. I just chop it rustic. It's rustic food. I can hear it starting to sizzle. Turning the heat down a little bit, because remember, with olive oil, we don't want to be superheating olive oil. Besides, once these pans are heated in the bottom, the base, they stay hot quite a long time. The broccoli is going to be added last. We're sort of making the sauce at this stage. We're going to add the Quorn later as well, and the peas. I'm just interested in making our nice creamy herby sauce. Just let those sweat down for a bit. You can put a lid on if you want to at this stage. That also cuts down on smells around the house. You don't really want to get any colour on these. We're just sweating them, so I'm reducing the heat a little bit more so things don't burn. Some recipes do call for things to be really well cooked, like caramelised onions. They take about half an hour to really go really caramelly, but not all recipes call for that, and we want this to be a nice pale sauce, which is lovely for a recipe like this because it means the green of the peas and the broccoli will really pop out. Think about colour when you're cooking. If a dish that you're making or you're coming up with is colourless, it can sometimes look unappealing or unappetising. We eat with our eyes, we really do. Not literally, you know what I'm saying. You look at something and think, that's gorgeous. Your juices start to flow, so to speak. And your salivary glands kick into action, preparing you for eating, preparing for digestion, because the first part of digestion is in your mouth with salivary amylase, which starts the process of breaking down the food, which means, you should chew your food properly. Pretty colours. Love that yellow, pale green, gorgeous. Now, as soon as you see things starting to soften a little bit in terms of the onions, because they'll be the first thing to soften, you can think about your sauce. It needs a little bit longer, really. Not too long. I also like a little bit of crunch as well. If you were adapting this for a recipe using chicken, you would also probably brown your chicken off at this stage as well. You might add it now and cook the chicken through. You don't need to do that with Quorn, you can add it later. It doesn't need to be pre-cooked for adding to a sauce. What I like to do with a dish like this is add my seasoning at this stage. So I'm going to add my garlic. I'm going to add all the herbs, the black pepper, the bouillon powder, and the parsley. Just give that a mix in, let it heat through, bring out those flavours. Gosh, that's looking gorgeous already. I can smell the herbs. I'm going to add a tablespoon of plain flour. And just sprinkle it over. Using my new tablespoon from the lovely Vivi Gregory of What Vivi Did Next and Vivi's Kitchen Garden. Stir in the flour. And don't worry if you think, oh, it's looking too dry. Oh my goodness me. Don't worry about that. Just keep it on the heat. Keep it moving. You're just cooking out that flour, just gently. If we turn the heat up at this stage, it would burn and the flour would start to really, really catch. We want to keep the heat low. We don't want it to catch on the base of the pan, so I'm keeping it moving. We've kept it moving for around a minute or so. You can hear it sizzling slightly. We're going to throw in a glass of white wine. And stir. What you're going to do is turn the heat up just slightly. You notice that it will thicken virtually straight away. As soon as it starts to thicken anymore, add your milk. I've got about, I don't know, quarter of a pint of milk, adding half of that to begin with. Stir it. Oh, it looks gorgeous. All those herbs. Oh. Add the rest of the milk. Smells lovely. Now, if you didn't want to use wine, you don't like the taste of wine, or you're avoiding alcohol completely, you could use stock, which is, just as good. Or just water, actually, at this stage, because you've got the stock powder in there already. Now, I'm going to assess it at this stage. What I may decide to do is add a little splash of water. I don't know whether you can see, but it's glossy. There are no lumps, because this method ensures that no lumps will occur. You do need to bring it to the boil, because we need to cook out the flour so we don't have any kind of floury taste to the sauce. And with a roux, it should cook out for about 6 minutes on a simmer. It's simmering now, you can see that, so we can turn the heat down to a gentle simmer. I'm assessing the thickness of the sauce. It's a coating sauce, so if we're using pasta, it just needs to coat the pasta. It shouldn't be swimming in sauce, but there should be enough sauce for the vegetables, i.e. the broccoli and the Quorn, to cook into. So I think I will just add a splash of water. I'm using the jug that the milk was in, just a splash. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to let that simmer for a few minutes. I'm going to turn the heat right down. I'm going to add the Quorn. I'm going to add the frozen peas. You may need to increase the heat a little bit because we're adding cold to hot. There we go. Give that a stir. I'm going to add the broccoli. And then the final ingredient is going to be a teaspoon of English mustard. A good teaspoon. If you don't like English mustard, you could use Dijon, you could use French. So give that all a good stir. Make sure the broccoli's coated. And then I'm going to add a splash more water, just a splash. Stir that in. Leave the heat on low, put the lid on and let it cook for 5 minutes. Okay, that's been cooking for about 5 minutes. Let's take the lid off. Careful of the steam. Excuse my arm. Give it a stir. You can see that the broccoli is turning a really brilliant green. And because we've had the lid on, it's been cooking in its own steam. And also, keeping the lid on prevents the sauce from sticking to the base of the pan. So it's important that pans that you've got have got good fitting lids. And also, the steam, the liquid created by the broccoli will increase the amount of liquid in the dish. So you should always factor in the fact that vegetables contain a lot of water. That's looking delicious. Just needs a little bit longer to tenderize that broccoli. You can check your broccoli by taking a sharp knife and just sticking it in. Yeah, it's still quite firm. You don't want your broccoli disintegrating. Broccoli tends to take, I don't know, if you're steaming it in the microwave, it takes about 3 or 4 minutes. If you're cooking it in a sauce, I think I mentioned in the other episode that when you're cooking anything in a sauce, it'll take a little bit longer. I think it was the potatoes last time. I would say push the broccoli down and just let that simmer for another 4 minutes or so, I would say. Put the lid on. Okay, let's have a look. Oh yeah. Notice how the liquid has risen? That's your broccoli. Give it a good stir. Still not catching, which is great. That to me looks cooked. It really does. Oh, goodness me. Oh, I can't wait to eat this. I can't believe I've got to wait like a day before I can dive in. I'm going to try it though. Test the flavour. Clean spoon. Get a little bit of the sauce. Just the sauce. Let's try it. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely gorgeous. You can taste the wine. You can taste the herbs. It's got a very fresh flavour to it. It really has. I'm turning off the heat now. If I prod a broccoli now, it's falling off. It's starting to get really tender and will tenderise further in the heat. So I don't want the broccoli to be completely limp. So what needs to happen is this needs to go off the heat and it needs to cool down, and then it's going to go into a container, into the fridge, and this is tomorrow's dinner. And we will cut to tomorrow and me serving it. Yes. Quorn and broccoli in a white wine sauce. So it's now the following day and I've got my sauce on a low light. It's not all of the sauce, it is 2/3 of it. I'm going to keep a third to put into a soup tomorrow, into a tin of soup, and beef a tin of soup up for lunch. This is for our pasta tonight. God, I can't wait to eat this. It just looks so delicious. I'm heating it up slowly on a low heat, and I'm going to put the lid on to keep the moisture in, and that's going to heat for a good 5-6 minutes. Let's get the lid on. Well, by the way, Jane Kelly, these are the stainless steel Le Creuset set I was talking about the other day to you. And over here I've got a nice big pan with lots of lovely boiling water ready for linguine. So linguine is ideal for serving with a creamy sauce. This is linguine. It's like a flat spaghetti. Let me see if I can get a... Yeah, you can see that it's a flat spaghetti. Now, my rule with pasta is always 6 minutes. Cook it for 6 minutes and test it. Linguine, in my experience, takes 7 minutes to cook. I'm also using this very handy tool. It's a pasta spoon or whatever you call it. It's great for getting pasta into the water when you start cooking it. So I'm going to slip this linguine in. I've got a good handful. Pop it into the water. And then as it softens, I slowly ease it down into the water. And the other thing about linguine is it's very filling, and if you've got a really good chunky sauce with plenty of vegetables in it, you don't need that much pasta. This is enough for two. Okay, that's down into the water. Bring it back up to the boil, or let it come back up to the boil. The action of putting the pasta in will stop the boil temporarily. As soon as it's come back to the boil, set a timer for 7 minutes. I've also got my strainer at the ready as well for when it's cooked. So the pasta is ready. I'm going to serve it into bowls. You could combine the two, but I'm just popping the pasta in and putting the sauce over the top. I'm going to add a good amount of black pepper. I'm going to top each one with some grated cheddar. And we're ready to eat. So here we are, finally eating this dish. So this is my Quorn and broccoli and white wine sauce with linguine. Smells divine.
It does smell lovely.
Oh, can't wait. I've been thinking about this all day. Oh, it's lovely.
This is a favourite.
The broccoli, it has lost a bit of its colour, but it's still just tender, still quite firm.
Oh, it's firm.
So it sort of stores really well. And the flavour is lovely.
And the sauce is sticking to the linguine, which is lovely. I hate it when there's a sort of big puddle of sauce. I remember we went to a restaurant in Suffolk once and it was a big puddle. Didn't like that.
I think that's quite an English thing. I find with Italian food it's a coating. You should just coat the pasta. Oh, the Quorn.
It's definitely a favourite, this. Another favourite.
Definitely. Like I say, you can combine it together if you want to in the pan. But to be honest, I find that's a bit of a faff, and I find that I'm fishing about to equalise the portions, you know? Whereas when you pour it on top, everybody gets a sort of equal amount of broccoli and Quorn and veggies.
I just use my fork. You use a fork and spoon.
Well, I probably could use a fork on its own, and I know that, you know, Italians just use a fork, but I learned as a child to eat spaghetti with a fork and a spoon. So to me it's sort of second nature to do that, and I find it the easiest way. So I've stuck with it. I don't care whether I'm a heathen. It's lovely. The herbs really come through.
I'm looking forward to what's next as well.
Well, I don't know what's next, Paul. I can't tell you because that's what I'm doing with these videos. I'm not planning them. It's sort of random cooking, really.
Well, that's what most of our cooking is, isn't it? We don't sort of shop and say, we're going to have that, and that, and shop specifically for those meals. Our meals are quite random.
So that's it for today's episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's inspired you to try some different things. Just give things a go. Think about the flavours you're using. Make sure they're flavours you enjoy. A lot of skill comes from experience as well and time. We're old, very old.
I mean, there's some flavours that don't go together, aren't there?
There are, Paul.
None of these are one of those.
Let's not go into that. We've made a few mistakes over the years. Everybody does. So we're chowing down now. Bye. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and hit that bell. Jing-a-ling.
I'm going to carry on eating.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
So am I. That's a big mouthful.